In the last video, I showed you how to get started with Laravel and how to create a Laravel project. Today, I am going to walk you through the Laravel application structure, which is intended to provide a starting point for building applications. Once you have Laravel installed, you will get to see a default directory structure. Right here in my project, I have folders like app, bootstrap, config, and so on. So let's start with the first one, which is the app directory. The app directory contains the core code of your application. It has a variety of additional directories such as console, HTTP, models, and providers. The console directory contains all your artisan commands, while the HTTP directory contains your controllers, middleware, and requests. The models directory, on the other hand, contains all your Eloquent model classes. The Eloquent ORM in Laravel provides an easy way to work with your database. So each database table has a corresponding model which is used to interact with that table. The providers directory contains all the service providers for your application, such as authentication or broadcasting. After the app directory, we have the bootstrap directory. Inside this directory, we have the app.php file, which bootstraps the framework, and a cache directory which contains generated files for application performance. These files are not so important and usually don't need to be modified. Right after the bootstrap directory, we have the config directory, which contains all your application configuration files. So in order to familiarize yourself with Laravel, I would recommend you to read through all these files. Then we have the database directory, which contains our database migrations, model factories, and seeders. After that, we got the public directory, which contains an index.php file. This file is the entry point for all requests entering your application. Inside this folder, you can also house your assets such as images, JavaScript, and CSS. Inside the resource directory, we've got all of our views as well as assets such as JavaScript and CSS. In the routes directory, we've got all of the route definitions for our application. By default, there are a bunch of files included such as web.php, api.php, console, and channels.php. The web.php file contains routes that the route service provider places in the web middleware group, which provides features like session state and CSRF protection. If your application does not offer a stateless RESTful API, then all your routes will most likely be defined inside this file. So for the most applications, you will begin by defining routes inside your web.php file. The api.php, on the other hand, contains routes that the route service provider places in the API middleware group. These routes are intended to be stateless. So this means requests entering the application through these routes will not have access to the session state. Inside the console.php file, you can define all of your closure-based console commands. Then inside the channels.php file, you can register all of the event broadcasting channels that your application supports. So let's move to the storage directory. Inside the storage directory, you will have your logs, your files generated by the framework, and so on. This directory is separated into 3 folders, such as app, framework, and logs. The app directory is used to store any file generated by your application, and inside there you also have a public directory. This one may be used to store user-generated files such as profile avatars that should be accessed publicly. The framework directory is used to store framework-generated files. And finally, your logs directory contains your application log files. The test directory contains your automated tests, and the vendor directory contains your composer dependencies. So besides the folder that I have explained, there are also files that you need to know about when starting with Laravel. Like for example, .env file, which stands for environment. This file contains some configuration values that might differ based on whether your application is running locally or on a web server. For me right now, everything is running locally and I am not using any database yet. But if you would like to run your project on a production web server, then you would need to do some configuration here for a database connection. Then we also have the composer.json file. Inside this file, we have the specifications about our project, properties, our metadata, and dependencies. So that is for this video. I hope you guys could learn something from this. Leave a like and subscribe if yes, and see you next time.